Hi there and welcome along to the third session in our studies in the book of Ruth. This session is called Faith in Action. We've been following this family as they left the promised land because of a famine. That left Elimelech's family in a pretty tricky and precarious situation. But after Elimelech dies, they're in an even more state of vulnerability and uncertainty. So in order to try and shore up and secure her family, Naomi marries her two sons off to Moabite women. But as we heard last study, the sons tragically die, leaving Naomi with absolutely nothing. She's completely destitute. She encourages her daughters-in-law to return to Moab, to return to their Moabite families, their Moabite gods even, saying that there's no future for them with her. There's no hope. She has nothing to offer them, and their only hope is to go back to their Moabite way of life. Orpah, through tears, embraces Naomi and then returns home. But we're told that Ruth clings to Naomi. And last time we saw this beautiful, stunning declaration of faith from the most unlikely of places, the young Moabite widow. And she declares her faith in Yahweh and her commitment to Naomi and Naomi's people. She will follow Yahweh no matter the cost. But we just have to stop for a moment and consider, what is that cost? What is the cost for Ruth to follow Naomi, to follow Yahweh? Because life for the widow in ancient societies was certainly not to be desired. Widows couldn't inherit or pass on land. It kind of stayed with the husband's family. She had no way of really generating any income for herself. She could not ensure her husband's lineage, that her husband's name would continue on in Israel's history. And widows had little hope of remarriage. This difficult and vulnerable situation for widows is why widows and other outcasts have such a special place in God's affections. They found themselves excluded and unloved, so God rejoiced in showering love upon them. Listen to what it says in Deuteronomy chapter 10, verses 17 and 18. For the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, the great, the mighty, and the awesome God, who is not partial and takes no bribe. He executes justice for the fatherless and for the widow, and loves the sojourner, giving him food and clothing. And he made provisions in the law so that the nation of Israel would take care of these vulnerable people. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 17 and 18. You shall not pervert the justice due to the sojourner, or to the fatherless, or take a widow's garment in pledge. But you shall remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you from there. Therefore I command you to do this. The people were to remember that they themselves were once outcasts, slaves in Egypt, and God showered unmerited affection upon them and rescued them. And so they are to have compassion on those in their society who find themselves as outcasts. So when Naomi and Ruth, these two widows, arrive back in Israel, and all they sort of get is the shock and the scorn of the women of Bethlehem, when Naomi has told her daughters-in-law that there's no hope for her, that there's nothing good if they stay with her, we have to see this as a sad indictment on the nation. Naomi should have had every confidence that the people of God, the people of Israel, would take care of people in their situation, that they would have a heart of compassion for the widow. It was built into their law. But the fact that she doesn't have any confidence in that speaks volumes for how the outcast, how the widow was treated in their society, and how far from God they had fallen. But where the end of chapter 1 gave us a glimmer of hope, chapter 2 puts a name to that hope. Boaz means swift or strength. And we're told Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. This man is both worthy and also of the clan of Elimelech. He is one of Naomi's husband's relatives. And what this means is that there is one provision in the law by which this family can be saved. In Deuteronomy 25, there is this provision that if a man dies and leaves a wife behind, a man's relative could marry that woman, give her a son, and that son would take the name of the dead husband in order to perpetuate that name so it wouldn't be blotted out from Israel's history. So right here at the very beginning of chapter 2, this man Boaz appears on the scene, swift and strong, a worthy man, a man who is actually able to help the two widows. So when Ruth asks Naomi if she can go and glean in the field, and chapter 2 verse 3 tells us, so she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers, and she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was the clan of Elimelech. When we see this, we're supposed to see something of the providence of God. Gleaning was the gathering of grain that had been left behind by harvesters, and was actually part of Israel's law. Farmers were instructed not to harvest right to the edge of their field and not to pick up any bits they dropped, that those were to be left for people to collect, people who had fallen on hard times. Deuteronomy chapter 24 verse 19. When you reap your harvest in your fields and forget a sheaf in the field, you shall not go back to get it. It shall be for the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow, that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. This is kind of like a social security built into the farming practices of the nations. Those with no hope of an income could gather enough food to feed themselves for any given day. And seemingly by chance, Ruth stumbles into the field that belongs to the one man who has any hope of redeeming them. But we know this to be more than coincidence. God, in his sovereign love and care, has seen fit to lead Ruth into the field of Boaz. But the big question that should be burning on our hearts is, what kind of man will Boaz be? His name means swift and strength, but in the time of Judges, when everyone is just doing what is right in their own eyes, will Boaz's strength and swiftness be used for his own gain, or will it be used for the Lord? Well, in the rest of chapter 2, we're given great insight into Boaz's character in order to answer this question. And I don't want to spoil the suspense for you that much, but you should find so much to like about Boaz in this chapter. From the minute he discovers who Ruth is, the Moabite daughter-in-law of his relative's wife, Boaz makes a stunning, countercultural choice to give this outcast the dignity that God calls him to give her, and the dignity befitting the faith that he recognizes in her. And at the end of the day, this is what chapter 2 is all about. When we meet Boaz, we're supposed to recognize him as a man of faith by his actions towards Ruth. We're supposed to see that Boaz himself recognizes Ruth's faith by her actions towards Naomi. Listen to the beautiful words that Boaz speaks over Ruth in verses 11 and 12. All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and native land to come to a people you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. In this study, we will see that faith is far more than just a verbal confession of some creed or statement of faith. Faith will always be expressed in the way that we live. I hope this study challenges us to consider what our lives of faith should look like. Enjoy.